field of research that we're involved in has a very strong core audience who are often very, very intelligent people who ask a lot of searching questions and are very, very intensely interested in the whole field. But the vast majority of people have no interest in it. In fact, they have an antipathy towards the notion that a small group of researchers might have the answers and the mainstream doesn't, and the mainstream is wrong. And they don't like that. And there is, well, certainly in Britain, I don't know if the press in America is quite as scathing, but in Britain I think it is fair to say that ufology, which I passionately love, has been sort of hounded into the ground, really, in the last 10, 15 years by the media. And it's taken a real battering. And I've just wanted to try and explore these new ideas I had, and at the same time take the opportunity to try and reach a broader audience. So that's what I was thinking of doing. And I'm not sure whether it's ultimately going to be successful insofar as you do that, because obviously what you want to do is you want to create a book that lots of people read and that maybe gets to be made in a film. And the hope then is that you reach a very, very wide audience who then consider the ideas that you're putting forward for the first time and think, wow, that's a really neat idea. I've never thought of that. And that's what I was trying to achieve. But, only time will tell as to whether that's the case or not.
Okay, well, I am reading your second book, and let's name them because the first one was called, what was it called?
Ezekiel 1.
Ezekiel 1, yes. And the second one is called The Followers of Horus. And you very graciously sent me that, and you gave me the first one. I mean, so I'm actually halfway through The Followers of Horus, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. And I think it does make a very possible movie. And as we talked about in my interview with you, you did have interest, I believe, from Hollywood. And I assume that interest is still there.
Well, it's in the background. Someone's holding it as a potential idea. But I'm hoping as the books get more exposure, that other people will be interested,
Sure.
I've got some magazine articles coming out next month and so on that will hopefully bring it to sort of a wider audience. But there are risks to writing fiction, and obviously one of the risks that and of criticisms amongst your core readership is that effectively either A, you're selling out, or B, you're going down a route that by making it into writing fiction, you're effectively saying, I no longer believe in what I've written in my non-fiction book. And that's not the case. I still, not only do I actually still think that what I've written back in 2005 in Dark Star is potentially very real, but the fact is that the evidence is growing that it really could be real, and more scientists appear to be recognizing this as a possibility, which they didn't 10 or 15 years ago. So, I'd like to sort of take the opportunity to scotch that idea. From my point of view, I'm still a very, very serious researcher. I've just taken the opportunity to be a little bit creative and take a risk and, produce some work that was thought-provoking for not only the core audience, but hopefully a broader audience as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, let me say, because I am reading it, and I've read the first book anyway as well, that I think you're actually being you're pushing the envelope, and you're being very courageous in the way in which you're doing it, because these are not just sort of fluffy, action novels, so to speak, regardless of who picks it up and decides to make it. Not only is there scientific basis for everything you write, you're not just making something up, and that I have to say, when you're creating fiction, or in essence, what appears to be science fiction, it has a lot more possibility of becoming, in essence, science fact. You're positing a possibility, but it's almost tongue-in-cheek, because there is an element, at least from the point of view of Camelot, that some of this may actually be true and, in fact, happening in this way or in a similar way behind the scenes. And, one of the things you've got going on in this story is a craft, a very large craft that is on a mission to the dark star, to the planets surrounding circling the dark star. And so that actually is not so outlandish. And having worked briefly, and I was in media, so I wasn't a scientist or anything, for JPL, that's Jet Propulsion Lab, and also a couple of other places on brief assignments. When I needed money, and it augmented my research, so I thought that it was a good angle to pursue. I have to say that I was aware of a very large, Starship Enterprise that was being built, that was put on the, basically on the books. This is a few years ago now, in which the scientists involved in it basically separated from the company, went to a sort of an off-site place in order to continue working on this project. Now, they were building, they were under orders to create, in essence, a Starship Enterprise. And when I say that, we're talking about a very, very large craft.
Wow.
Now, I know about that. Okay, that was in the public domain at the time. But then, who knows where they've gone with it now. And you have to say that even from the point of view of Project Camelot, that would be, in essence, small potatoes, because I was in the public domain. I was certainly not privy to any secrets. And yet the aerospace organization that got the sort of notice that they needed to do this, and the scientists were very excited by the notion. But this was already, we're talking in 2000, sometime between the year 2000 and 2004, I would guess, in my life that I came across this. But according to what we know, the Nazis were already building such craft, and certainly they came over with paperclip, and that, in essence, all of that went black. And we're talking back, over 40, 50 years ago. So, I mean, have you researched all of that? And where was your mind when you were writing this and you were creating this idea of building this craft?
Well, I have researched a lot of this through reading stacks of books down the years, and I'm very aware of Project Paperclip, and then the fact that Nazi scientists were sort of commandeered into the U.S. rocket program, which inevitably led to Apollo eventually. And there was this huge stride forward in rocket technology, sort of in the 40s and 50s, and like I was saying earlier on, things seem to sort of grind to a halt after that, and we seem to have, if anything, gone slightly backward in the West, although the East is doing a good job at catching up. But the thing is, while I was listening to what you were saying, a couple of things came to my mind. Firstly, is if something is really out there, and I do believe that it is, then it makes sense that people will arrive at that conclusion from various different points of view and various different channels of research, because clearly it would be the focus of an intense amount of sort of undercover research by the government and so on. And the chap you were talking about, Arthur Neumann, who came forward and said that, I actually take that really very seriously, because from my point of view, if the dark star exists, and the evidence appears to suggest that it may well do, and the sort of the mythical evidence is definitely very strong that it's there, then you would expect someone like Arthur Neumann to come forward and say, actually, I was involved in X, Y, and Z, and these people were all talking about this, and from their point of view, they were dealing it with facts. So I take that very seriously, because it's coming from a completely different strand of work from mine, but it arrives at the same point. And also what you were saying with JPL, the interesting thing about JPL is that I would say, are one of the more enlightened sort of organizations within astronomical science. They had a chap working with them called John Anderson for decades, from what I can see, who was very into Planet X. And he was one of the